Ragy, would there be other motives to use the firearm? Is the glamorization of violence, seeing things in the movies, imitation, video game type scenarios, is that also part of the picture here? What do you think?
Very much so. Very much so. So we describe this. And so again, we're talking about different slices of a pie. So everything contributes to some degree. And then certainly there's overlap. But basically what we showed is that the per capita rate of mass shootings was very stable and low, but very stable up until about 1970. I mean, it didn't change decade by decade. And then starting in the 1970s, 1980s, the rate started increasing, and it's increasing. So the increase is increasing. So not only has the slope increased, but the rate of the slope is increasing. It's really quite scary. So the question is, what happened in the 1970s and the 1980s? Several things happened. And also, just to be clear, the rate of mass murder perpetrated with other methods also increased in the 1970s or 80s. It's very scary. So a couple things were going on. But one of those things is that pre-1970, 1980, the primary influences on young people were parents, were clergy, were teachers, those sorts of things. Post-1970, 1980, the primary influences, and this effect is continuing now, of course, with social media, is media. So, of course, we had television before 1970. We had, and bad media, not all media. I mean, there are good media like this, educational media. And then there's obviously, bad media or less adaptive media. So we obviously had TV and we had movies and we had radio. We had media before 1970s. But a lot has changed since the 70s and 80s. So, for example, maybe some of the older people might, remember, we didn't have, for example, home movie rentals until like the 80s. It was really really only became a thing in like the early 80s. Music television only became a thing in like the early 80s, those sorts of things. And then, of course, we had computers and then the internet and now social media. So again, there's obviously good media, but then there's also less adaptive media. And so in particular, violence is very infectious. Violence begets violence. And so we have very violent, when we talk about violence, we're talking about gratuitous violence, which is now like, I mean, not just now, but had been an issue for a long time. So the entertainment media, we're talking about movies, we're talking about television, we're talking about video games, and we're talking about music, now romanticize violence and gun violence in particular in a way that is different than how violence used to be portrayed. Now it's like cool to be violent. It's cool to be violent with a gun. Violence is portrayed differently, or like firearms, for example, are portrayed differently now than they were before. And that is part of what is contributing to this, mass shooting epidemic.
To go even deeper on these ideas, you can watch my full episode using the link in the description or the box on the screen.